fellow humans, listeners of the podcast realm. Welcome to another episode of the 10 Laws podcast with East Forest. I am said East Forest. I'm coming to you today from Salem, Oregon. I am on the West Coast tour of the East Forest Ceremony Tour as we speak. We played in Seattle the other night and Portland, Oregon, and I'm just sort of stopping in my hometown, seeing the family before we continue on. Continue on to Eugene and San Francisco, Esalen, Mammoth. Where else are we going? Santa Barbara, Laguna, I think San Diego. Several more dates. You can see all that at eastforest.org/tour. But I got to say, the first two dates have been awesome. Thank you to Sangha Seattle and Portland last night. I was back at the old church, which was, I got to tell you, like having a concert grand piano on stage to play as part of my set is something I would absolutely like to make a regular thing. It's so wonderfully musical and just so fun for me just to have like real instruments on stage to perform. I want more of that. Even got to use the pipe organ as I promised I would. I did my best to figure out what all those knobs and pedals did, and we had a really good time at the end there with the pipe organ, with the audience singing along, creating some loops. But I just want to thank everyone who did come out to both of those shows, because they're just, that's what makes it successful, is that you guys are coming out to see the music, and we share in this East Forest ceremony experience together. When I was in Portland too, one thing that I guess wasn't so great is that while I was sound checking, someone smashed my car window and broke into my car, which is like in broad daylight, on a relatively busy street with people saw it happen. Just some guy decided that's what he needed to do. He didn't really take anything. He actually stole our snack bag, spilled our snacks all over the street. So he clearly was desperate to potentially taste those macadamia nuts or the cashews or some delicious beef jerky. It's all gone as far as the snacks. But, it was definitely threw things for a ringer, and Radha definitely saved the day in finding someone to replace the glass, like while I was performing. But you know how that is, like an adrenaline rush, and it's a violation. You feel very unsafe, and it's not a good feeling. Like in the middle of the day like that, someone's just trying to steal your shit and break your stuff. And now I'm continuing on tour, and that energy hit me, and I'm just trying to like work with it and let it flow, and do what I can, because you feel very vulnerable when things like that happen, and it's just a bummer. But when I was on stage, I was ending the concert in Portland with the song "You're a Guru," which sometimes it feels like a good way to end. And I was talking about how, like, you are a guru, and also you might have a guru like Ram Dass or the Maharaji, but then, like, this guy who broke into my car is my guru in a way. And what I can see in him, and how he's a soul too. And he's a fool, but he's also probably quite lost and quite damaged and all this sort of stuff. So it's been a journey. It's been a journey. I'll be honest with you. Like after that concert, I was in a weird state of feeling super high from the event itself, like musically and the people and the energy in the room. I was just so like overjoyed and feeling so good. And then simultaneously, I was so tired and burnt out and was dealing with this break-in. And, for just some of it was just logistical, like trying to get it fixed, and it's super late at night, and we had to take all the gear out and then put it back and yada, yada, yada. And I'm just feeling that my body memory of like that adrenaline and stuff. And so it was just sort of a happy fried state. And I've gotten some sleep since then, last night, and I feel a little better. So we keep putting one foot in front of the other. We keep walking our walk, as we all do. I don't know what else we can do, but I'll tell you this: the day soon I will cast this spell where I can have someone on the road with me to help me set up my gear every night and break it down, and sort of like watch over stuff like that. Is probably a bigger leap and jump than anything else I could possibly have, maybe even more than a tour bus. Oh, it's coming. It's coming. It's coming. But I'm very much looking forward to seeing you guys on the road. Thank you for spreading the word. You did a great job in Seattle and Portland doing that, and that was a blast. I'm sitting right now in my childhood home. I'm actually in my sister's old room, and it's just a quiet spot. I could hop on the computer and do some podcasting for you guys. Get this stuff out. But it's a strange thing how time goes on. I mean, this house. We moved here when I was 8 years old, and my parents are still here in Salem, Oregon, and it's always a trip. It's always a trip, I was looking at old pictures last night and just looking how we keep growing, we keep aging, and the mystery continues. Today I have a podcast with someone that I met at the Awaken Futures conference in San Francisco. She was brilliant. And I said, hey, I'd love if we can talk. She's the development officer at the MAPS organization. If you don't know what MAPS is, it's the Multidisciplinary Association for Psychedelic Studies. It is been around for a long time, and they've been heading up a lot of the important headway with MDMA being used for trauma and PTSD. Particularly with vets and so forth, and they've been pushing that through the FDA in very official channels for several decades now. They're one of the leaders in this, and they still are. And they're the largest nonprofit that's investigating the therapeutic use of psychedelics. So they're currently in a Phase III FDA trials utilizing MDMA therapy to treat PTSD, and results have been promising. So we're going to talk a little bit about that with Liana and get into some other things. And her name is Liana Sananda Gillooly, Gillooly, Gillooly. That's my best guess, but I was calling her. She said Liana Sananda. But she's very sweet. We had a wonderful conversation. And before I get into that, please review this podcast. It always makes a big difference. I saw some recent reviews. I want to release some meditations on Spotify and stuff from this podcast. So the podcast is kind of like our little lab experimental zone. You can let me know in the comments down there which one of the meditations I've done thus far on the podcast maybe you like the best. But just give it 5 stars. It just takes a little bit. If you can write a little comment, even better. Sharing it online, sharing the podcast with your friends helps get this new story out there to the world in different ways. All these fringe folks that we're talking to that have beautiful hearts, beautiful minds. It's these conversations. If you just find little nuggets that help you find ways to live your own life wisely and well, hey, that's a good thing. That's a good thing. The retreat. We're going to be at Esalen. I believe that one is sold out in a couple weeks, but you can still come out to the retreat in Utah in the fall. Beautiful fall colors. Marissa Rada-Wepner and I are leading that thing. It's going to be a blast. Lots of information at eastforest.org. And I don't know, there might be other things I'm forgetting, but, so be it. Let's get into this business. This is Liana Sananda Gillooly from MAPS. Well, thanks so much for joining me. It was really nice to meet you in person at the Awaken Futures.
Yeah, it was such an incredible event, and it was so awesome and inspiring that they chose to begin the event in such a ceremonial way with you at the helm. I really appreciated that.
Yeah, I was, I guess I'm a little biased, but I was excited that we had something like that incorporated the technology of ceremony.
Yeah. Mm-hmm. Spiritual technology. The most ancient form of technology.
Yeah. Well, it's actually, I get on my soapbox about it all the time, but I'm always sort of mentioning how it's a way of just telling our bodies and our brains that something is important. And it's a way to kind of really speak to the unconscious and communicate with these deeper layers of our consciousness to sort of plant seeds. It's sort of like getting into a trance state so you can, communicate. that part of your brain and body.
Absolutely. Yeah, we don't have very many good practices and examples of that in our modern Western culture. So it's nice to be reclaiming some of that space, especially that audience is quite heady. And
Yeah.
so, yeah. And
Do you
the
go to a lot
topics.
of these things? Do
I
you do a lot of?
Yeah, I'm quite involved in the consciousness hacking community. And, even the term itself, consciousness hacking,
Right. It's bold.
it's bold and, it's very, San Francisco optimization, Silicon Valley, think about the type of people who are hackers. And so it definitely has that kind of approach. And what I've really appreciated about the event and actually the community in general is almost, despite the name, there's a lot of heart-centeredness and, somatic experiencing that is encouraged and had in those environments. So that's one of the reasons why I've really taken to that community. And yeah, I really appreciate the approach that they're having in bringing these conversations forward.
Yeah, I mean, what's your personal view on sort of this particular symbiosis between technology, meditation, and psychedelics? I mean, that's not something you see bandied about too much, like putting those three together. But I found that was sort of an interesting, at least conversation. Or is that something that's sort of common for you being in the Bay Area?
Yeah. So I guess in one sense, it is likely more common for us, those of us in the Bay Area who subscribe to all of the collision of these modalities. So, so there's that. And they are three totally distinct and robust fields of inquiry and science and everything. So, for me, the bringing together of all of these, schools of practice it's about really finding skillful means, right? What are the available tools for awakening in our time on planet Earth with all our accumulated wisdom and knowledge and information that we have access to? How can we identify the most skillful means that can assist human beings in awakening and transformation and healing? And so I think that, psychedelics and meditation, that kind of makes a lot of sense to me. They go hand in hand and have always, I mean, the whole contemplative practices, the bringing in of Eastern philosophy and spirituality co-arised with the psychedelic renaissance of the 1960s. And I think that was in large part due to the English language. Our language is insufficient in describing non-ordinary states of consciousness and energetic realms and all of these things that become available to a person in a psychedelic state, in an altered state or experience. And so the framing and the languaging that's available from everything from Zen Buddhism to Vedic philosophy, it just helps a person to understand themselves and their experiences. And so that combination is a little more obvious to me, considering the history and also just considering how the, things like meditation pair very nicely with not only the psychedelic experience, but both the preparation and the integration from having a peak transformational experience.
Yeah. Something you said there reminded me about how some of this stuff comes full circle. I was talking to Krishna Das recently, and we were at the Ram Dass retreat in Maui, and like he'll go out to India to sing kirtan, and it's sort of like, the younger generations out there, they also might be hiring some Western Buddhist luminaries to come to India or even Japan to teach. Mm-hmm. And it's like, it comes from the East, goes to the West brings it back. Mm-hmm. And then it comes this kind of full circle thing. And it's just like an interesting place that we're in these days. Mm-hmm. How something's so mainstream and
well, it's true globalization as well, right? Yeah. So it's just the distance between ourselves and our cultures have completely shrunk over the past century. So there's just a lot more accessibility and cross-pollination that's able to happen now. So, yeah. And I guess too, what makes this event stand apart is the inclusion of technology as one of the modalities. I think that when people think about technology, especially in the era that we're in right now, there's a large sense that technology is downgrading the human condition. When you think about the core business models of the top major tech companies, they're essentially advertisement companies, and they're, manipulating your mind with algorithms to get you to click on things and to capture your attention to sell it to advertisers. And so one thing that I really appreciate about this community in particular is that they're aligned also with the transformational technology community. Are you familiar with the TransTech conference?
No, but the idea you're talking about, though, I think is a really interesting subject. Yeah, tell me more.
Yeah, so this is the idea. Well, basically, the framing is asking, are humans in right relationship with technology? Is the way that we've developed our tech in highest service of humanity and the earth, and helping us feel connected to ourselves and each other and the planet we call home and our spirit? And I think in large part, we've created technology to make things easier, more convenient, and to, really capitalize on consumer capitalism. And so this question of, is there a different relationship? Is there a potential or a design principle for technology where tech could be used to help assist us in our healing, in our transformation, and becoming the best versions of humanity that we could possibly be, and becoming the best stewards of this earth that we could possibly be? And so that core philosophy, it's not the way tech in large has been developed, but there is a community of people who are looking at ways that technology can assist a person in, not only achieving altered states, which there is some of that, especially with like AR and VR and, some transcranial stimulation and light effects and things like that. But just, one example that I like to give is we have a digital straw man, which is all of our data has been collected together. And so there's like this straw man that is made up of all of our data. That's like our whole identity. Everything we click on, where our attention is, what our interests are, what we're even doing and buying, and where we're going, and everything. And then that data is run through a series of algorithms that then help to direct advertisements to us. And so the question is, what if all that aggregated data was actually run through algorithms that could help us achieve our personal goals? And can help us achieve our goals of healing, of grounding, of being more calm, of feeling more connected to our community or family and friends, of being more present in our days. And so there's like this, that's like a fundamental flip on the, on like the goal or the orientation to how these systems are currently being used versus how we could use technology for human potential, to access our greatest and highest potential as humanity. And so I really love that line of inquiry in all of this.
Yeah. Do you see that flip or that change so much as a personal choice, or as something inherent in the system being capitalistic, and it, like that, there's something blocking it from maybe being more altruistic?
Yeah, I think that it's just, misaligned incentives and value structures currently, which is this profit for profit's sake motivation, and this late stage consumptive capitalism that we're currently in right now, which is built for convenience and to get you to buy things and do all the things that we know it's doing. And so I think that if we can collectively identify a different set of values that can anchor in a new set of essentially products that can help a person. I mean, I even imagine, we talk about psychedelic healing, but for me, the other reason why I like this community is it's about multimodal treatments that can not only psychedelics can heal us. And it's really about setting somebody up for their personal journey of healing and transformation. And so that can look like very many different things. And I think as we're moving forward, we're going into precision medicine and personalized medicine in healthcare, and that's the future of healthcare. And so I wonder what that looks like in terms of precision medicine for mental health care. And so I imagine that there could be these personalized programs that are built for people that can help a person walk their path and help a person access different modalities. Not the same things are not going to work for the same people. And so, for example, say meditation isn't the thing for me, but going on a morning walk is, or, that float tanks are the only place that I can really calm down my brainwave activity, or, whatever it is. But it's about building like a program. And I think an important piece of this too is having a community that can support each other through their journey of healing and transformation. So having maybe like some online communities or cohorts that are helping each other along and cheering each other along on this path. And so, yeah, I think that it is currently a systemic issue, being that we have these absolutely Goliath companies that are unchecked right now, that are writing their own rule books, that our governments don't even understand and don't know how to regulate. And so it's kind of just run off the rails, and it's just been built for the maximization of profits for their fiduciary responsibilities to shareholders. And so, so that's the model. And so part of the other kind of interesting opportunity that I see in all of this work is how can we define new incentive structures, new value systems, and also new funding models, so that there's different priorities. For example, like a public benefit corporation, which prioritizes public benefit over the maximization of profits. So there's there's a lot of opportunity, I think, in this time to get inventive and to be visionary in the ways in which to construct these potentially very supportive technologies.
Well, there's a lot there. I was thinking back to talking about personalized mental health. It's almost like I think about a digital shaman or a digital guru. But one question at the end there that came up for me, I mean, do you think it's possible inside a system that is in some ways fundamentally broken, for instance, being inside a system of growth, which is sort of what our money system is in, where, as you said, beholden to the shareholders, they need to make profit, and our money isn't inflationary, and we're in this kind of growth model on the earth, and we start to run out of things to make commodities out of. And can we be inside that system and just say like, well, we'll do it better, or we'll create systems inside the bigger system? Would that even work? Or do we have to sort of, do something completely different? And I bring this up in the notion of even psychedelic science and MAPS itself. It's sort of like a conversation that's out there.
Absolutely. Yeah. So there's this old Buckminster Fuller quote that goes something along the lines that in order to create something or create a new system, you have to create something that makes the old system obsolete. I butchered that, but essentially that's the idea, is that the master's tools won't disassemble the master's house. I'm pretty sure that's Audre Lorde. And so, there's these concepts that like, if we're utilizing the tools of oppression, and I'm not even going to go down to the rabbit hole of like the systemic oppression, and the systemic racism that is built into the structures of power that dominate our reality. And so, but there's this thing that's like, you've got to build the new system to make the old one obsolete. That renders the old one obsolete. And so I've been very much, I mean, I occupied Wall Street. I didn't have a bank account for 5 years. I've done all sorts of things that were very much in that vein. And where I've kind of arrived at is that there are so many vast established structures that are actually functioning. The example I like to give is that we generally have paved roads and stop signs and traffic lights and things that move us through our constructed reality that are generally working. And so, rather than burn down and fully do away with all the structures that are our dominant operating system of reality, the thing that I think would be beneficial for us to do is to be a membrane that can transmute the parts of the system that are broken and not working, and so they into something new and different. And so to be that membrane, you have to be a couple things. Number one, you've got to learn how to interface with the dominant operating structure of reality. And so there is a bit of contorting to fit into the established frameworks. Yet when you're able to bake into the foundation of the structure that you're building, the ability to transform or transmute or be the bridge that walks what you're doing from the way it is to the vision of the future to where you want to go. So long as that's clearly defined and built into the foundation of it, I think that that's a more efficient way of doing things that is less destructive as well. And so for me, that's really like the opportunity with MAPS, and where we are with MAPS is that we're putting MDMA assisted therapy for the treatment of PTSD all the way through the FDA process, so that we will have a federally sanctioned access to MDMA assisted therapy that will be set up in the healthcare system. So, our healthcare system is broken. The entire field of psychiatry is fundamentally flawed. And all like the available solutions to treat the maladies of the mind are insufficient. And so what I see is like at MAPS is that we're doing therapy on a system. And so instead of just like running a normal drug development biotech startup company that then goes and creates a pharmaceutical product that then goes and markets the product and makes a bunch of money off of it, MAPS has been doing drug development in a nonprofit context. MAPS created a public benefit corporation that's wholly owned. When Rick Doblin realized that there would be an opportunity to sell MDMA, which like was never really the end goal or the end game, but there's something called data exclusivity, which incentivizes drug companies to develop drugs that are off patent. And so all the classic psychedelics and MDMA are not patentable. So there's very low incentives for drug companies to develop these drugs. And so, but what data exclusivity does is it allows a 5-year window where no other group or organization can justify receiving a license to manufacture or distribute MDMA for 5 years. And so people could go and create their own data and research and put it through the FDA process themselves and then have permission to sell MDMA. It's highly unlikely that they'll do that. They'll just wait until our 5-year window of exclusivity where we'll be the sole distributors of MDMA in this country during that time. They'll probably just wait for that window because the amount of money and time it would take to do that is not worth it. So when MAPS realized this, there was a realization that the sale of MDMA is a taxable event and it cannot be done by a nonprofit. And so we had to create a corporation that could carry out this transaction. And the realization was that we didn't want any shareholders. We've turned down tens of millions of dollars in investment and people who want a piece of MDMA, as a drug. And we've like turned, I mean, like $50 million in total have been like recently turned down, And so, but there's a commitment to developing drugs and then creating a pharmaceutical company that is radically different than anything else out there, and has a completely different incentive structure, and has a mission and ethic and value alignment that is the priority of the activities of the organization. And so for us, and it's like yes, we're interfacing with the FDA, we're interfacing with the dominant structures of our current reality, and we are transforming the way that drugs are developed and administered in the United States by creating these structures and this way of delivering MDMA therapy into the world. So that's like an example of therapy of the systems.
Yeah, it's kind of wild to think it's sort of becoming like a large scale legal drug dealer. I mean, that's what pharmaceutical companies are. It's like Rick Dalton coming all the way around.
Yeah. And people have been like a lot of raised eyebrows, right? Around it's a
corporation, and it's sort of the idea of exclusivity under any model, the idea of profit,
right.
I don't know. It definitely perks up some ears, and there's probably natural skepticism there.
Yeah. So what's so cool is that we have no shareholders. So it's the sole investor is the nonprofit, and the sole beneficiary of any potential profits that the PBC might make go straight back into furthering the field of psychedelic research through the nonprofit. So there's none of these, that's really where perverse incentives can come in if you have this responsibility to shareholders and those inputs coming in. And there's this concept that there's like strings attached to money. So we're doing it without those strings attached. And then in addition to that, there's an opportunity to set a very competitive price for MDMA, because there will inevitably be big pharma that comes in and starts manufacturing MDMA after this 5-year window. And so we have the opportunity to actually set the bar so that we can make these treatments like accessible to the most amount of people. And so there's very many different ways that we're going about that. But this is all part of like what the opportunity is right now, is to just set the bar super high and demand that anybody else who wants to enter in this field meets us there. And so that type of quality control and, vision and values and ethical alignment is paramount to the way in which MAPS is constructing access to these treatments and to these medicines.
It seems like the therapy itself, it's more than just taking a drug and it does something to your brain. Obviously, there's a ceremony. Going full circle here. And something about that ceremony creates a spiritual event, or there's some kind of alchemy between the drug and that ceremony, which is really just the process, the intentionality of it. That seems to be the real meat of it. And it feels in that sense, we're kind of like it's more of a spiritual crisis fundamentally that we face as a civilization and as a planet. But would you agree that the element of ceremony that's not something the FDA gives a shit about, probably, but
I would be
does in a way.
Yeah. So it's so interesting language, right? And so I would be a little more reticent to call it ceremony, even though that's what it is, right? But just because of the nature of running highly scientific clinical research, it's important that, we be careful about the way in which we talk about that.
Because of funding, or because of the FDA
because
freaked out?
Yeah, it's mostly just an awareness of needing to adhere to the FDA standards. But I talk freely. Like I don't, I'm in the nonprofit side, and the PBC is running all the clinical trials. So that's another advantage of the separation, is that we're able to put all the research under the PBC. And so the charter of the nonprofit is quite broad, which includes developing safe and legal contexts for access to psychedelics, right? And so that can look like very many different things, one of them being through spiritual use in the Religious Freedom Act and things like that. So we are for all of the full spectrum and variety of ways to access these treatments and these medicines. And so, so the way that the therapy is done, there's actually a therapist team. So you're with two people, and the protocol that the therapists learn is something called inner directed healing. And there's an idea that a person has all their own inner healing intelligence innate within them already. And so the point of the therapy is not to guide or to steer the journey, but to actually sit behind the medicine and let the patient lead themselves and learn and gain the tools to access that inner healing intelligence and to heal themselves. And so it's not, and so it's a really powerful experience to for an individual to go through this process of really like the therapists are there to support the process and to ask questions and be present with the process that the patient is leading. So that is how we've, trained therapists and everything is really, it's about holding space and sitting and helping to facilitate whatever process is coming through the person. And so, and there's, a lot of consideration has been made, and the protocol and the practice has been informed by indigenous wisdom and traditions. And so there's always going to be tension when you essentially secularize the environment that people are accessing these very sacred states of being through these tools. And so part of the challenge is, how do you do rigorous scientific research and create a clinical approach to the training protocol and the way the therapy is conducted that can also take into account what we've learned from ceremonial spaces. And so there are certain things that are done, like there's a deep consideration for the environment that the person is brought into. Everything from like the lighting to there's always like, we require art to be on the walls. There's even a budget for fresh flowers inside the rooms and some plants and things like that.
What about the music?
The music is central. I mean, it is absolutely central. And so the therapists are essentially in some level kind of like DJs on one sense. And there's several playlists that therapists use. Johns Hopkins actually also published their psilocybin therapy playlist on Spotify. Oh, yeah. So I'm sure you've seen that. But that's one of the key learnings from ceremonial spaces and wisdom traditions and practices is the central importance of music in all of this. Yeah.
I mean, you're speaking my language. I mean, I mean, it's funny. A lot of the things you're talking about are about tapping into someone's intuitive knowledge, and of course, the setting that they're in, their mindset. These are all things that are fundamental to even to that ceremony, East Forest ceremony that you experienced. It's just sort of without the MDMA, it's getting into similar states. And when I saw the John Hopkins psilocybin playlist, and those were the initial things that kind of spurred me into action to try to create something different, because I had been doing my own forms of ceremony for 10 years. And I thought they were missing the mark on that music point of view. It's sort of like, I didn't see like a musicologist or even the creative aspect, which is difficult to bring into a scientific setting to qualify and quantify it. But the music part, I just felt like it was a little bit kind of almost, that's why I made the record. I didn't want to just complain about it. I thought it'd be better to offer a solution. That's just my opinion. There's infinite ways to skin the cat, so to speak.
Yeah, I love that though. Thank you for this offering and this beautiful solution that you're putting out there into the world. I think it's incredible and powerful. And I think that So did you meet Mendel Kalin at,
Oh yeah.
okay,
Yeah,
great. Yeah. So that's part of what's so interesting right now is that we're in the first inning, beginning of the beginning of this emergent field of psychedelic research. And so we have to be so, we've had to like narrow it down. Like we're doing a single drug, single indication, which is for PTSD. And it's such like a narrow scope right now, the things that we're looking at and accounting for. I'm personally really excited for the time when we can start looking at the combination of multimodal treatments combined with psychedelic therapies. And we're just not there yet. And so
wouldn't decriminalization bring us to a place where we could study anything we wanted?
I wish that was the case. And it's actually just really complicated. For example, all of the progress that's been made in the cannabis industry, it is vastly easier to study psychedelics than it is to study cannabis in the United States today. And so there's something called, so NIDA, the National Institute on Drug Abuse, has received the only license to grow cannabis for research. And so NIDA has the single supply. It's grown at University of Mississippi. The cannabis is terrible. We know because we have conducted some of the only research into smoked or vaporized cannabis flower for the treatment of PTSD. And I can tell you firsthand that it's like atrocious cannabis because it's grown by the National Institute on Drug Abuse. And what incentive do they have to grow quality cannabis for research?
But they're doing that because it's illegal federally, right? So I mean, it'd have to be a federal decriminalization.
Exactly. Yeah. And so I, if we're talking about decrim initiatives, like what happened in Denver, which is not decriminalization, they made it the lowest priority of law enforcement. It was a citywide ordinance. It wasn't, you can't decriminalize on a city level. So that in itself is a misnomer. And I think that's an important distinction to make. Don't get me wrong. I'm celebrating it. It's a massive PR statement and a signal of the zeitgeist of the times and the will of the public and the desire of the public to embrace these sacred medicines. And it's also like, until we have federal decrim, there's these layers of complexity in terms of gaining access to the supply that then we can go ahead and study. So it's, there's layers of complexity in all of this for sure.
As life is.
Yes, absolutely.
As the world is. And there isn't like one, and it's not like, psychedelic anything is the one answer. It's just a very powerful tool. It'd be nice to unleash
tool and toolkit. Yeah.
Yeah. Like there's a lot going on right now.
Yeah. Yeah.
Are you hopeful? Just when you step back beyond even the picture of just maps and psychedelic research, just looking at the state of the world and what we have to do to sort of get through.
Yeah. So, I have to say that it's so easy to get mired in the heartache of the ecocide that we are currently experiencing, that we will continue to experience for the rest of our lives. And we have hit this point of no return. And it's soul crushing to witness that and to listen to young teenagers who, like this whole Extinction Rebellion movement, who are just looking up at the adults going, what have you done? How could you have done this to us? You've ripped us and robbed us from a future where we can have clean water and air to breathe. And so it's like really a challenging time to be a conscious and aware person on Earth. And I have a huge wellspring of existential hope in me, because I see that, it feels impossible, but I have to say that there seems to be this emerging group of superheroes that are all on the same team here to rescue Spaceship Earth and to rescue the human species from our extinction. And I see that there's all of these new things. I mean, just today I was sent something on carbonpath.net. And what that is a group that is creating an accountability structure and a pledge and inviting companies and corporations to pledge to massively reduce their carbon emissions by 2030. And it's kind of like a self-accountability factor, considering our government is not going to regulate these companies. It's an invitation for companies to regulate themselves and then for people to support the companies that are regulating themselves. And so when our government can't act, it's nice to see that there's like, okay, then we can just do this ourselves. And I think that there's a lot of reasons to be dismayed, but why I'm on the psychedelic train in this time is that these are some of the most efficient tools that can give a person a shift of worldview. And I'm of the belief that we're not going to be able to solve the massive social ills of our time, like political polarity and our climate crisis and the coming AI and job automation and the loss of purpose and the loss of future, until we treat the underlying fear, anxiety, and trauma and grief that exists within the human consciousness. And so I'm of the opinion that psychedelics could be and potentially are very much a master key that can unlock a worldview or a perspective from which all of the great issues of our time are solvable. We have the resources, the information, the science, the technology to resolve all the major pressing issues of our time and to, herald in a time of regenerative abundance on our planet. And so that is like, it kind of feels a little bit like a Hail Mary. And sometimes I wonder if we're all just like holding hands at the end of the world. Well, it won't be the end of the world. It'll be just the end of our species.
Yes,
the earth shall persist. Yeah. But
on that level, it is sort of from the inside out. It's from the individual. Points out the power of choice,
right,
and the power of through this very individual experience, potentially on a psychedelic, sort of a peak mystical experience, you sense your connection to all that is, which includes everyone around you and the planet, and it gives you perspective to your own patterns and habits that perhaps you want to choose to change,
right,
beyond just having insight. And so I think it just kind of keeps going back to as opposed to it being top-down solutions, which certainly would help. Really, those top-down solutions originate from individual change.
Well, and the top-down solutions come from individuals and the minds of individuals, right?
Yeah, exactly. Yeah.
So this is like another, you can't create the future from the same mindset that created from which the problem came, or I think that's Einstein. Anyways, I'm like butchering a bunch of quotes today, but it's all of that. That's like the change that needs to happen isn't some like physical external expression. It's actually just an internal shift that needs to happen. And then everything else flows outward from there.
Yeah, that's sort of the criticism of technology, is that people are waiting for, we'll invent our way out of the crises.
Right.
It's just another finger in the dam, essentially. But they actually see that as like, well, that's sort of what's happened along the way. And we hear about things like garbage in the ocean, or we hear about rainforests being deforested for beef, but you don't really see it. And it's only been in certain pockets that maybe hurricanes have devastated places, or basically food still in the stores, the chemicals in them that are poisoning us. You don't see them, and it might take decades to really cause the cancer. It hasn't caught up full force day to day in the American mind yet.
Right. Yeah. Well, we're so detached.
Part of the crisis. Very detached.
We're so detached from our understanding of our place inside of an ecosystem, a closed system that we impact, and that impacts us. And
that's part of our detachment from nature.
Exactly. Which to me is like the great fall from grace, right? Is the second that we stopped understanding how intrinsically involved we are in in nature and how humans have this divine opportunity to be incredible stewards of the many facets of life that are alive and wanting to thrive here on this planet.
We are nature.
We are nature.
Literally.
Yeah.
We're walking and talking. We're nature too. It's crazy. We had that idea of dominion over nature. There was that idea of like, well, it's, I think, I don't remember what religion it was, but there was definitely back in the day, the idea was like, oh, nature is here. God gave it to you to spoil. That was the point.
Yes.
Like, cut down the trees and take out the ore. That's why it's here. And you're top of the pyramid.
Right. Exactly. Yeah.
It's just kind of an ego trip, I suppose. But maybe we're just coming back to the heart.
Yeah, coming back to the heart. I mean, there was actually this great study that was done about nature. There's a nature relatedness survey, which tells how much a person relates to and feels a part of nature. And there was a survey that was done after people's first psychedelic experience that showed that people were vastly more likely, their nature relatedness number went way up after having a psychedelic experience, right? And so that's one of the reasons why, and for me personally, I so believe that these medicines are asking to come through right now while we're having this crisis of consciousness and this separation from nature. In this time when nature has been subdued and used and we have like this extractive, consumptive, reductionary, approach to how we use nature. And so these medicines, this perspective, these shamanic tools that have been used for millennia in sacred spiritual context, in mystery schools and secret societies and all of these well-held traditions that, on some level, people wonder what it would be like to take these experiences out into the masses and into the mainstream that have been so well held and kept only for sacred settings. And to me, it's like, well, the earth's screaming at us to listen. And so how can we get the most amount of people to hear the voice of the earth themselves?
Amen. I mean, that's why I bring like nature field recordings that I record into the music itself, into that experience, because it is the music of ourselves. It's sort of singing the wildness and the wilderness of our own hearts that we've forgotten about. That's all around us, and that a lot of us don't. I used to live in New York City, and you can't see the stars. You don't see any natural anything. And now I'm sitting to you in a town of 200 people, look inside a national monument, and all I see is nature. And
so good.
It's humbling. It really is. It's not convenient, but it gives me the gift of a kind of nourishment that it's sort of like more of an energy than something I just put in my mouth. And it's sort of like the way meditation maybe nourishes some people. It's cumulative in a way. And we have forgotten it.
Yeah.
Well, we can wrap this up. Maybe I'll end it by sort of asking you, we kind of got into this a little bit about on a personal level for you. I love that you said you have existential hope. That's a really interesting way of putting it. But what is the thing currently that you're kind of either rubbing up against as your edge, or this podcast, I guess, is called 10 Laws, and it sort of refers to a song about where my friend talks about these hunter-gatherers code of 10, like sort of like the stars that he keeps mostly in sight to keep the ship of his life sailing straight. And the rest is kind of his gravy. And I don't know, is there something like that in your life? It's sort of like, man, if I figured this part out, that's really important to keep this on track.
Yeah.
And it kind of helps the rest flow.
Yeah. The North Star, so to speak. Yeah. Yeah. I mean, look, I've been on this path and on this mission in my life now for about 12 years since I had this experience, where essentially the plants and the trees and the medicine, well, in my experience at the time, I was also studying international relations and studying the United Nations and systems of global order. So I can see why it translated into this. But there was this directive from medicine that said, start the Lorax party and give a voice to the trees. Right. And so I didn't take it like totally literally in my life, but that directive of just doing everything in my power to get out of my way and allow my channel to be open so that I might be animated by the will of the divine. And I consider nature to be divinity. And to be in service to the life force of this planet, that energy that animates all of life, and to be really in service and a voice for the plants. And so that is really like my North Star that I am orienting towards every day in my life. And what my prayers are for is just getting out of the way so that I can be a better voice for the plants. And so, yeah, that's one of the laws of my life for sure.
I dig it. Well, you are a great voice. You speak to it quite well. And really, we're just teaching each other to love deeper and to love ourselves and just keep walking the walk, huh?
Yeah, that's why we came. That's why we came into this human form, to experience this thing called love. It's the whole point and the whole purpose of
it's the soup we've always been in that we just have to keep remembering. Yeah.
Yes. Remember. Yeah.
Well, how can people find either you or whatever you want to point them to?
Yeah, well, so, I definitely go check out maps.org. Easy enough domain name. And then I'm just at Liana Sananda on things like Instagram, for example. That might be the easiest way to find me. I keep getting told I need to make a website or something.
How do you spell Sananda?
Sananda. So it's Liana and then Sananda. Sananda. So at Liana Sananda. Yeah, you can find me. I'm the only one out there with that name. So
I dig it. Well, hey, really, thank you again.
Yeah.
I just appreciate having these conversations, and I know other people do too, because you get to pick up things, be inspired, and just hear other people, especially when it's someone like yourself, you're sort of saying things that maybe people feel, but they haven't been able to put together perhaps fully themselves. And that's always it's great. It's just great.
Oh, thank you so much. Yeah, it's really, I appreciate the invitation and being part of this conversation with you. And I look forward to seeing you again in the flesh one of these days.
Awesome. Thanks.
Yeah.
Well, thank you to Liana. I really enjoyed getting a chance to spend some time with her. She's brilliant, and I was just trying to keep up there. But I really learned a lot, and MAPS is doing a lot of good work. So if you want to check them out, please do. Look forward to seeing you on the road. Chapter 3 of the Ram Dass project is coming out real soon, June 21st, which is the solstice. We will be down at Esalen doing our Esalen retreat on that date. But we encourage all of you, if you'd like to host a listening gathering, to kind of get together, listen to the new Chapter 3 tunes, maybe some of Chapter 1 and 2. It's a chance to meet the others, the community. You could do it for yourself, for your friends, or open it up to the public in your area. And it's just a way to gather and create community. Feel free to do that. You can also reach out at info@eastforest.org. If you like, and we can send you lyrics and the music and stuff, and maybe some discussion questions to help you put an evening together. But Chapter 3 of Ram Dass is coming out on June 21st. So, looking forward to that. This music that you're hearing in the background is called Please Pass the Bliss, and that is from the Ram Dass record as well, from Chapter 1. And as you know, Chapter 4 is coming out on August 9th, and that's when the full record comes out. So all the previous chapters put together, plus a few more new songs. It'll be a 14-song album, and it's a complete listening experience. That's what we've been building to all this time. And on August 9th is also the release event in Los Angeles. We're still looking for a venue, but that's coming together. But that's the song you're hearing in the background. More to come. See you at eastforest.org. See you on social medias. You keep walking your walk. Don't take any shit. But if you do it with grace. May the forest be with you.
We love everyone by inhabiting the soul.